that Mao was biding his time. He worried his revolution was going off the boil. He saw a privileged bureaucratic class emerging, as had happened in the Soviet Union. He feared the return of capitalism and materialist incentives. He believed China's chance to have a perfect socialist society was passing. Mao's supporters printed a book of quotations from his political speeches and writing and used them as the basis for a new attack on what was called the capitalist road. "We still have to wage a protracted struggle against bourgeois and petty bourgeois ideology," said Mao. As he tried to regain power, Mao used a piece of spectacular political showmanship to revive his reputation. To demonstrate his continuing vigor, at the age of 72, he led a mass swim across the river Yangtze. Trying to break the thinking and attitudes of old China, he began with her traditional culture. The 1,000-year-old Beijing opera was singled out as the start of his attack. If it could be changed, then anything could be. 8 new revolutionary plays were written to replace all the old stories of emperors and concubines. Tung Xiangying, who once played princes, now took the lead as an officer in the People's Army.
我能拿到这个角色，由我来演。
I was chosen to play this revolutionary role, and it was a great honor.
很光荣。 我们是灵魂的工程师，我们有一种。
As artists, we were engineers of human souls.
为赚钱吃饭，或者是简单的工作，而且我们有一种责
We
任
didn't
感。
just perform to earn money, but had a serious responsibility to re-educate people.
一定的教育作用。我们非常幸福。
We were so happy that Chairman Mao was creatively involved in this opera.
By late 1966, the great proletarian cultural revolution was well underway. In school, children recited his message to them. In Shanghai, at the number 6 girls' school, Xiao Ailing was the headmistress.
我们同学就感到外滩的变化、上海的变化。
The pupils came to realize that all the changes taking place in their families, at school, in Shanghai and China were brought about by Chairman Mao.
毛泽东带给我们的。
Students were used to carry the Cultural Revolution forward. For the first time, young people were encouraged to attack authority and the old hierarchy of the party. And the advice came from Mao himself. Bombard the headquarters, he said. To rebel is justified. One of the Beijing students who were the first to call themselves Red Guards was Zhang Baoqing.
Chairman Mao started the Cultural Revolution to keep up the momentum for change. We thought if we follow Mao, we can't go wrong. Only he can lead us from one victory to another.
succession of huge rallies were held in Tiananmen Square. The master of mass mobilization had shown he could still draw a political response directly from the people. This time it wasn't the peasants in the country who did his bidding. The most educated and energetic generation in China were following his every word. The students felt excited and liberated as never before. An estimated 11 million Red Guards came to see Mao. 15-year-old Zhao Xiaojun was presented to him.
那个时候呢，我是直顾的激动，直顾的兴奋。
I was so overwhelmed by the excitement, my mind just went blank. The only thing I wanted to do was to get a good look at Chairman Mao and shake his hand if I got the chance.
我要多握几次毛主席的手，一有机会我就要去跟那个
I shook hands with him 3 times. Because I'd been received by Chairman Mao, millions of Red Guards regarded me with awe.
认为我是。
When they saw me, they always wanted to shake the hand that Chairman Mao had shaken.
Banners attacked Liu. Even small children were taught to denounce Liu. The rage was extended to foreign governments, with attacks on Western diplomats in Beijing. Almost anyone who was in power of any kind was denounced as a capitalist roader. The whole structure of the party was brought down. In schools, pupils attacked their teachers.
We didn't hate him personally, but he represented bourgeois values, so we had to attack him. We dragged our headmaster onto the school stage, then students put a dunce's cap on his head and a big placard around his neck. The more extreme we were, the more loyal we felt to Chairman Mao.
The country was now in the grip of a revolutionary mania that became more and more violent and destructive. The Red Guards attacked the four olds: old habits, old ideas, old customs, old culture. Books were burnt and museums pillaged.
Our solution when things went wrong was always more revolution, not less. Mao mobilized his masses against the government bureaucracy, a fresh uprising of the people, the only source of progress. Mao called it a cultural revolution and said that what China needed was Daminju, mass democracy. Chaos can't harm us, he proclaimed. It can only harm our enemies. Deng Xiaoping was among those attacked. Mao stripped him of his power. Like many party leaders who experienced Mao's mass democracy, Deng Xiaoping would always fear Deng Yuan, chaos, turmoil, upheaval.
And the Red Guards were sent to the countryside to learn from the peasants. But the Cultural Revolution only ended with Mao himself in 1976.
高山在痛哭，大海泪涛涌，惊天动地的噩耗啊，震撼全球。我国各族人民敬爱的伟大领袖毛泽东同志于1976年9月9日在北京逝世。
In a bid to keep the country together, the propagandists exploited the scenes of mass emotion on Mao's death. Much of the grief was genuine, and many had seen their lives improve beyond measure.
It began in spring 1966 as a protest movement by middle school students. They denounced the academic establishment and, above all, the party bureaucracy. A young philosophy lecturer put up a wall poster attacking the university authorities as reactionary. Mao took up the cudgels on her behalf, and the woman, Ye Yuanzi, was catapulted to national prominence.
Chairman Mao said this was the declaration of the Beijing Commune, the Paris Commune of the 20th century, even better and more brilliant than the declaration of the Paris Commune. He made me and our big character poster so famous. He lifted me so high.
Ye Yuanzi put up her poster here on a wall at the university that's been set aside ever since the 1950s for student debates. It marked the opening salvo of what would become known as the Great Proletarian Cultural Revolution, Mao's last attempt to ensure that his ideas of revolution continued in China after his death.
6 weeks later, Mao intervened again, this time physically. The 72-year-old chairman lowered his imposing girth into the Yangtze River and proceeded to wallow and float for almost 2 hours, drifting with the current. In China, symbols speak more loudly than words. It was a demonstration of vigor and power. After waiting on the sidelines for 4 years, Mao was back. Exploit prompted a wave of emulation that became steadily more fanatical and outlandish.
红色青少年最听毛主席的话，在韶山灌区，他们以上百华丽战斗精神，他们决心从小就经风雨见世面，跟着毛主席闯锋。
Back in Beijing at the beginning of August, Mao criticized Liu Shaoqi for failing to address the students' concerns. He appointed the defense minister, Lin Biao, a retiring introverted man, as China's new number 2.
Dawn,
August the 18th, 1966. Mao emerged in person to review his young supporters, a million or more shock troops who'd responded to his call to oppose Soviet-style revisionism. The Red Guards, who before long would plunge China into near civil war, pledged to give their lives to defend the chairman's cause.
发展，一定能取得伟大的胜利。我们要打破一切剥削阶级的旧思想、旧文化、旧风俗、旧习惯。我们要扫除一切害人者，办掉一切贪旧事。
Instruction to smash all old things was relayed at Red Guard meetings throughout China.
Mao 主席教导我们，革命要靠自己，我们要自己教育自己，自己解放自己。自己起来闹革命，无论是北京市的革命师生，还是各地的革命师生，在无产阶级文化大革命中，我们要打破资产阶级的思想，打理无产阶级思想，也就是打理毛泽东思想。中国共产党万岁！战无不胜的毛泽东思想万岁！我们伟大的领袖毛主席万岁！万万岁！
This was the spirit that was encouraged the first year of the Cultural Revolution. The army was told, hands off. The police were told, hands off. And Mao said, let the young champions make their own mistakes, learn from their own mistakes, and correct themselves. We can't stand behind them and point and criticize. So it was a great free-for-all.
周总理和我们一起唱歌。
As the celebrations reached their climax, Mao and Lin Biao were presented with Red Guard armbands. Prime Minister Zhou Enlai, always quick to accommodate the chairman's moods, looked in his element. The highest-ranking victims were brought out for public humiliation before mass meetings in a football stadium. They wore placards around their necks with their names crossed out like common criminals. The purge he'd set in motion would eventually claim other victims still higher in the chain of command. Meanwhile, Peng and his colleagues were left to twist in the wind. The Cultural Revolution was above all an attempt to change people's minds, to wash them clean of old thinking and the behavior that went with it. Former landlords and capitalists, with the words bourgeois element inked on their shirts, were forced to undergo re-education by militant youths.
One of the quotations from Mao that was most popular on the part of the rebels was that without destruction, there's no construction. First destroy, and on the basis of the destruction will arise something new. And then it has to become a better world.
In the autumn of 1966, the great proletarian cultural revolution, Mao's last campaign to try to ensure that China upheld revolutionary purity, was at its zenith. The National Day celebrations that October were the first since the Cultural Revolution began. This was the time the little red book became the indispensable fashion accessory. It had been compiled by Lin Biao from Mao's writings as a set of moral maxims for the army.
全世界人民要有勇气，敢于战斗，不怕困难，前赴后继。那么，全世界有一的是人民的，一切魔鬼，统统会被消灭。世界的前途一定是这样。
For the fortunate few, the neck plus ultra was a little red book signed by Mao himself. For everyone else, it was a talisman, an emblem of ideological zeal.
红太阳毛主席接见了3000多名来自全国各地的工农兵代表。
Each day, all Chinese, even the blind and deaf mutes, had to seek guidance from Mao's works. The ceremony was called Seeking Instruction in the Morning and Reporting in the Evening. The cult, bizarre though it may have been, released energies that had been bottled up for years.
It had become very bureaucratic, very stale and stagnant, and Mao felt that himself, and he used to say, the worst thing in the world is to have a stagnant pond. If there hadn't have been things that needed tackling, you couldn't imagine having that avalanche of popular energy and passion that suddenly burst out, unexpected even by Mao. Unanticipated, and he kept saying over and over, who would have thought it, who would have thought it?
From the beginning of 1967, new organs of power, known as revolutionary committees, were set up to replace the former party administrations. They were composed of soldiers, workers and party veterans. In Beijing, the event was marked by grandiose celebrations. More than 100,000 people gathered for a rally in the city's biggest stadium, with the army playing the starring role. To mark the occasion, Zhou Enlai himself presided. He was accompanied by Mao's wife, Jiang Qing, and the fourth-ranking leader, Chen Bada.
以中共为首的反革命修正主义集团妄图把北京市变成他们的独立王国，他们打着红旗反红旗。
Zhou Enlai worked closely with Jiang Qing throughout this period. Mao had appointed his wife deputy head of the Cultural Revolution Group, an ultra-radical kitchen cabinet which effectively ran China for the 3 years the Great Upheaval lasted. She relished her new power and notoriety, and Mao knew he could rely on her totally.
During the Cultural Revolution, the relationship between Jiang Qing and Chairman Mao was very good. At that time, she was the chairman's most important and first ally. Jiang Qing was not a person to keep her tongue in her pocket. She spoke out if she had something to say. She was emotional and extreme.
Throughout 1967, the massive purge that Mao had set in motion focused on the topmost echelons of the party leadership. Peng Dehuai was dragged out and publicly vilified. To his Red Guard accusers, Peng was a three antes element, wasteful, corrupt and bureaucratic. Jiang Wentian, Mao's predecessor as party leader in the 1930s, was damned alongside him. That summer, Red Guards converged on the walled park of Zhongnanhai, where Liu Shaoqi had his official residence. For weeks, they kept up a loudspeaker barrage, until finally Liu was forced to come out and confront his accusers. Liu himself was expelled from the party forever, and he and his wife placed under arrest. The Red Guards were then packed off to work in the countryside, pledging loyalty as they went.
毛主席啊，毛主席指出的道路，我们坚决走。到农村去接受贫下中农的再教育，到农村去滚一身泥巴，把无限中域民的红心锤炼得更红更红。再见，祝你们在广阔的天地里锻炼成长。再见，祝你们沿着毛主席指引的光明大道奋勇前进。
6 months later, Mao was at last able to convene a party congress, the first for 11 years, to declare that the Cultural Revolution had been brought to a successful close. In the new party constitution, Mao named Lin Biao his closest comrade in arms, an accolade the chairman had never before accorded to any of his colleagues. The army, which had emerged from the Cultural Revolution as the country's leading political force, was rewarded with key positions. Even Lin Biao was caught up in the mood, savouring his triumph. Mao's closing address, his last known speech in public, reflected his satisfaction on the way events had turned out.
我们的大会，这一次第9次代表大会能够开得好，能够开展一个团结的大会，胜利的大会。在这一块，期待更大的胜利。
Now the aim was to get rid of those people in power who wanted to follow the capitalist road.
In 1973, Mao appeared for the last time before a major party gathering. But he was too weak to stand, and contrary to all protocol, the delegates were told to leave before him in order not to witness his physical decline.
In the second half of 1974, they said that he had emphysema and heart disease. They told him not to smoke anymore. At the beginning, his aides would cut a cigarette in two and give him just half of it. But after he'd smoked for a moment, it would be gone, and they'd have to give him another one. He really wanted to stop, but he couldn't.
Despite his deteriorating health, Mao's mind was as whimsical as ever. The curtsies of the ladies in this Zambian delegation intrigued him. So did Henry Kissinger's very tall wife. But by 1974, the end was nearing not only for Mao, but also for Zhou Enlai, diagnosed with cancer. Within a year, he was dead. The Goethe of Chinese Communist Society turned out for Zhou's funeral.
(1976年1月8日9时57分，周恩来同志的心脏停止了跳动，全党、全军、全国人民都为失掉了我们的总理而感到深切的悲痛。
Ceremonies were organized, but when Zhou's body was taken at dusk for cremation, more than 1 million people, alerted by word of mouth, lined the streets of Beijing to bid him farewell. The following summer, northern China was struck by an earthquake in which 250,000 people died. Chinese television showed heroic scenes of survivors being brought out of the ruins, saying, "Long live Chairman Mao." But most Chinese saw it as an augury. The mandate of heaven was about to change.
There were times when Mao's condition was better for a while, and the doctors would flatter him, saying, "Chairman, you're getting better. You'll have a long life. You've got many years ahead." He finally died from a combination of heart and lung ailments. It was a very painful illness, but he never complained. When the Chinese are in pain, they usually groan and call out, "Oh, mother, help me." But he never made a sound.
His death in September 1976, at the age of 83, brought about a sea change in China. Soon afterwards, Jiang Qing and her allies were arrested and put on trial. Excerpts from the proceedings were broadcast around the world.
共患难啊！战争的时候，唯一留在前方追随毛泽东主席的，只有我一个女同志。 你们躲到哪儿去了？
She was condemned to death, commuted to life imprisonment, and eventually committed suicide in her cell. On Deng Xiaoping's instructions, Mao's actions were declared to have been 70% correct and 30% mistaken. A judgment which would allow Deng himself to pursue a very different dream of China's modernization. To the Chinese state, Mao's image is sacrosanct. Inconvenient truths which might tarnish it are quietly forgotten.
Up to the present, history, well, at least the Cultural Revolution, outstandingly, is swept under the rug and ignored, studiedly ignored. And I think it's very unfortunate. Very unfortunate. I think they need to study Mao very carefully, both what was right about Mao, which was a great deal, and what was wrong about Mao. Because that's part of the immediate past out of which present China is growing.
"30 years ago, China was still considered a developing country. Today, it is the world's second largest economy and a world power which no one can ignore. This journey from scarcity and poverty to prosperity and abundance is the fastest in the history of the world. But in the official history of China's unrivaled economic success, there is no mention of the events in the early summer of 1989. Events which indirectly hastened the economic development for which the world admires China today. When China's first communist leader, Chairman Mao Zedong, died in 1976, he was succeeded by fellow party member Deng Xiaoping. Under his leadership, China began to change the economic policies that had applied during the rule of Mao Zedong. The new policies, inspired by the economies of the Western world, led to steep increases in food prices, unemployment, inflation, and corruption. These changes caused great dissatisfaction and protests, and from the mid-1980s, demands for both economic and political change grew. In the spring and early summer of 1989, these protests culminated into what the rest of the world knows as the events of, or the massacre in, Tiananmen Square in Beijing on June 4th. This date and the events where at least 200 and perhaps as many as 1,000 people were killed is practically unknown in today's China. It is considered so taboo that it may not be mentioned in public.
From Tiananmen Square, the sound of gunfire sounded like a battle, but it was one-sided. A line of soldiers was strung out facing a huge crowd. The air was filled with shouts of "Fascists! Stop killing!" We were in the line facing the troops. They were about 250 yards away. Young people were singing the Internationale to a background of gunfire.